In this video, I'm going to show you how to clean your Xbox Series S in 3 stages, starting from the easiest to the most difficult. This video is sponsored by iFixit, more on them in a minute. So the tools you're going to need are either screwdrivers or driver bits. I've got a Torx T8 security Torx, and then I also have a T10 security Torx, and then I also have a number 2 slotted bit. I'm going to be using a pair of sharp needle nose pliers, a cleaning brush, some cotton buds, some isopropyl alcohol, some compressed air, and this isn't completely necessary, but I'm going to be using a mini vacuum cleaner. And this isn't completely necessary, but I'm going to be using a sharp dental pick to remove the stickers on the back. Now the first thing we're going to do with the stage 1 cleaning is take some compressed air, and we just need to spray it along all of these holes. These are the vent holes, so we're going to want to spray it along there to remove any dirt or debris along there. And you also might need to bring a cleaning brush along and also loosen it with that. Once it's loose, then you can spray the compressed air again, and that will remove it. Same with this top piece. If you see any dust buildup, you want to remove that using a cleaning brush and then compressed air. Now, another thing you can do, sometimes with compressed air, people worry that they're just blowing more dirt into the system further. So if you're worried about that, you can also use just like a mini vacuum. And that way you can pull the dust up and out. And especially if you're brushing it off like this, you can use the vacuum to vacuum it while you're brushing. And then on this side, there's another vent hole right here. So you want to clean that as well. And then also on the bottom side, there's yet another place where there's a whole bunch of little vent holes. Now, if you see dust on your vent holes, that means there's likely dust inside the system too. So for this stage 1, we're going to remove these 2 stickers on the back and remove 2 screws and pull this bottom plate off. This is where I use my dental pick just to get under those stickers so I can remove them. You can do it other ways too. You can use, a screwdriver or something like that. I use a dental pick because it's easy to get under there without scratching the plastic. Sometimes I scratch it a little bit, but usually not too much. There we go. So once those 2 stickers are removed, you'll see 2 screws. These are T8 screws. You can actually use T9. I don't use T9 usually though, because sometimes the bit will kind of stick in there really hard and it doesn't quite fit all the way down. So I prefer to use T8. Once those 2 screws are removed, we'll just put it on its top, push the cover back this way, just like that. And then we can simply lift it off. Now the bottom cover of this is probably going to have some dirt on it. You can see this one actually has some liquid damage from soda. If that's the case, what I use is some isopropyl alcohol and some cotton swabs, and you can just go through and clean all of that soda off using this method. Now, I'm not going to show all of this cleaning in this video since I'm just showing you how to do yours, but this is how you would do it. Now with that bottom cover off, we can see down inside the case of the system a little bit better, but in order for stage 1 to work the most effectively, we need to remove this white cover from the rest of the system. To do that, we need to remove these dark green screws. Here, 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 and here. I'm going to be using a Torx T10 to remove these screws. These screws are usually in here fairly tight, so don't be surprised if they are. And if they're kind of difficult to remove, you can use a bigger driver or screwdriver if necessary. This smaller one usually works for me pretty well, but they are in here pretty tight. Now with those dark green screws removed, we can remove this inner piece from the outer shell. In order to do that, we're going to put it up so it's resting on its front side. I'm going to pull on this plastic edge out this way and then kind of pull down on this part. Put my finger in there to hold it there. And then we'll do the same here. We'll pull out on this side and then push kind of down on this. Now, next, I'm going to kind of lift up, keep this side pulled out like this, and then just kind of wiggle it out through the case, just like that. Now we can set this part aside for a minute, and we'll focus on the case. Now, as you can see, the inside of this case has liquid damage, more soda it looks like. So that can easily be cleaned off, just like I already showed you. But likely if you've had dust on the outside of it, you'll also likely have dust all in here. So I just kind of do the same as I showed you. Use a cleaning brush, go through and clean off all of the loose dirt and dust and debris. from all the surfaces inside here. You'll almost always have kind of a ring of dust around this where the fan is located or where the fan seal is located. And this is where the fan sucks in air. So there will likely be dust there. Then the same over here. You can brush all of the loose dust off there and then use compressed air or a vacuum to get rid of all of that dust. Then we can set this piece aside and focus on this middle part. Shopping for tech for back to school can be really costly, so it's usually a better idea to try and repair or upgrade the laptop you already have. And iFixit is here to support you with 15% off of Mac repair parts and upgrades and 15% off of select toolkits. This is the mid-size Mako bit set, and it is one of my favorites. This one has 64 bits along with this driver and the extension tube, and it can get into almost anything. You can buy this Mako bit set all by itself, or if you need some additional tools, you can buy it as part of the iFixit ProTech toolkit. If you're looking for a bigger kit to get into more and larger devices, the Manta kit is what you need. This is the kit I use when I need to get into larger devices with larger fasteners. They've got this whole section over here, which is all of the larger stuff. They have this smaller section over here, which is the smaller stuff. They also have the smaller driver as well as this very large driver. This driver works really good when the screws are really tight because you can get a really nice grip on it and just have extra torque. If these two bit sets aren't what you need, iFixit is also offering sales on 3 other bit sets. They're offering 15% off the Mahi, the Minnow, and the Moray bit sets. iFixit is here to make back to school shopping a little bit cheaper. The sale only lasts until September 3rd, so be sure to go to the link in the description that'll take you right to it. Now again, I've got a lot of work to do here because there's a bunch of soda that's been spilled on this. Likely yours won't have this, but if it does, you just have to go through and clean it all up just like I'm doing. If it's just dust you have in yours, then I would go through with my cleaning brush and a vacuum or compressed air and just clean it all like this. You'll want to especially focus on anywhere that there's a bunch of holes in the case because that is for airflow. So along the side, along the top, and then along this side as well. You might as well also do the bottom while you're here, just make sure that's good and clean. So that's the end of stage 1. Now, if you're looking down inside here and you see a bunch of dust on the fan blades, if you look down there even more, you can see the heatsink. If you look at that heatsink and it's caked with dust and hair and debris, then you need to move on to stage 2. For stage 2, we flip it over and we remove all of the yellow screws, as well as this one silver screw. Now with all those screws removed, we will move back to our T8 Torx bit, and we need to remove all of these boards on the outside of the shell. Now you don't really need to keep track of exactly where these boards go because there's really only one way they can fit on here. This board has the cutout for the USB port over here and also the cutout for this little metal tab. So neither of the other 2 boards will fit where this one's supposed to go. Once the 3 screws are removed, then we just kind of wiggle as we pull up on this. And there we go. We just have a connector here that connects into the console right there. Next, we have this one screw over here with this little mini board. This is what has your power button and LED light for the front. And then same thing, just pull up as we wiggle. And then one more on this side. And we have 3 screws. And again, we don't need to keep track of where this one goes because there's only one place it can go. And all of the screws for these 3 boards are also all the same. So no worries about getting those mixed up either. I love it when manufacturers do that. And same thing, pull up as we wiggle. And we have a smaller connector on this one. And now with all of those boards removed, we can put this back on the table, and then we need to pull up on this top metal piece, just like that. Sometimes the fan will stick to the top of this metal piece. Not usually, but every once in a while it will, especially when it's had soda damage. So we'll set that metal piece aside. Now I'm gonna flip this around so it's easier for me to get to the parts here. Once you have that top metal piece off, all you have to do is pull straight up on the power supply, and that comes right out. Oh, I didn't even know this one was gonna have this, but there's some serious liquid damage down on the board on this one. That wasn't even planned. Now with the power supply removed, you can fully remove this fan, or if you're worried about this connector and tearing it off or damaging it, you can actually just take the fan and flip it up just like this, and that will allow us to get to the heatsink. And starting at the heatsink, I will just take my brush and just brush along these fins and get the brush down inside the fins as you go. And you can either use canned air as you're going to really clean that dirt out, or you can use a vacuum as well. I do also like to use canned air and spray down along here. That will get all the dust from around the board down there. Now, once your fan is done, you can kind of move it back into place. And then we can spray this area out or vacuum it. And then we will need to clean the power supply. So the power supply has ventilation holes around each side. So what we need to do is use a brush if needed and brush off any dust from all of the sides of it. And then same thing as before, we can use compressed air to spray into the power supply on each side. That will get the air pushed through the power supply and out the other side, hopefully. Once that's done, I'll just put the power supply back in place. We do want to remember to clean off this top metal plate. And it's going to be the same as the others. Just take your brush, brush out any dust and debris, especially focusing on anywhere there's holes, like along here and right here. And I do recommend not cleaning it right over the console you just cleaned. So we'll just do it over our work mat. And then either spray this out or vacuum it out. And that is the end of stage 2. If your Xbox is extremely dirty, and also if you would like to replace the thermal paste, then we're going to move on to stage 4. We need to make sure the power supply and fan are removed. To remove the fan, I'm going to use my pair of sharp, slim needle nose pliers, and I'm going to pull up on the plastic part where these black wires go into. I'm not going to pull up on the part that's attached to the board. So just right there. And then I'm just going to wiggle back and forth and it comes right out. Now, the other thing that you can sometimes do if you're paranoid about that is grab the wires just like this, pull back and forth as you pull out. Now, sometimes that can damage wires or the connector, but usually that will work. Now, once that fan is removed, we need to remove these 4 screws. They are T8 screws. With those screws removed, we can flip the console back over, and then we're going to pull the board out. But first, we need to get this metal piece out. So I'm going to use my metal dental pick and just pry up right here, and then same over here, pry up right here. There's 2 little tabs that go in these holes right here. Once you do that, you should be able to just pull that right out. And with that out, we can now remove the board. So I'm going to grab the heatsink right here and also put my thumb under this USB port and then kind of pull up. And it should be pretty loose in here. There is some thermal paste on the bottom that will kind of keep it stuck down, so you do have to pull up with a little bit of force. Now we need to remove this X-clamp. There are multiple ways to remove the X-clamp. They even make a special tool just for that. I will be using a flathead number 2, and I'll show you how I do it, although this isn't necessarily the best way, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, because you can damage the board doing it this way. So if you do it this way, just be super, super careful. So I'm going to start over here where there's no components around here, so if my screwdriver slips, it's not going to knock anything off of the board. But what I'm going to do is get my screwdriver and put it right in the gap between the post and the X-clamp, just like that. And then I'm going to twist it and let that kind of pull up and then pry it up if needed, just like that. I'm going to turn it and do the same thing right here. I'm not going to be pushing down that much. I'm just pushing down with enough pressure to keep the screwdriver in there. You could hear it kind of disengage, and then I will pry it up like that. Now with those 2 parts of the clamp removed, it is much easier to remove the other ones. I make sure and give it plenty of play or slack over here, and then I bring my screwdriver over and I pry up on it, just like that. And with that one removed, then this one will just come right off. So that's how I remove the X-clamp. Like I said, there is a tool just for that, and it's probably better to use that tool, but this is another way that does work. Now we can flip it over and remove the heatsink. To do that, we just have to lift up. There we go. And then we can see the dried thermal paste. Now with everything apart, we can clean out the bottom shell. Also, make sure and focus on getting all of these holes cleaned where the different ports go through. There will likely be dust buildup here, so make sure and clean that really well. And then for the motherboard, I just use my cleaning brush anywhere there's dust and just go through and loosen it. Make sure and get inside the ports because they will likely be dirty. And then just kind of brush over the whole board. Now be careful not to brush over the thermal paste. Try and keep that as clean as possible. Once you have the dust loosened, you can use some compressed air and spray it out. Now for the heatsink, you've likely already cleaned this top side, but you can also do the same for the bottom side. Just come through with your brush, just clean all of the fins with your brush, and then use the canned air or vacuum to blow it away or suck it up. If you've made it this far, you also might as well replace the thermal paste. So to do that, I usually use a cotton bud and just loosen all of the old thermal paste just like this. A lot of times I just do this over a garbage can and then knock all the loose stuff into the garbage can. Once all the loose old thermal paste is removed, I usually give it a good cleaning with some isopropyl alcohol. Just like that. And I'll set that aside and let that dry and move on to the APU. Now for this, I just go through and do the same thing using a cotton swab. Just clean all that old paste off. And again, I would do this over a garbage can as well. Once it's all clean, we can apply the perfect amount of thermal paste. There we go. Make sure that you have plenty. It's okay if you have too much. Just don't have too little. And with that done, we can reinstall the heatsink. I'm going to line up the posts that go through the board, just like that. Then I'll reinstall the clamp. There's little grooves on each of these posts. That's where these hooks on the clamp go. So I'm going to engage that there. Same with this one over here. There we go. And then I will do the same here. I'm going to push down on this and that will engage that tab with the groove on the post, and same thing over here. There we go. Had to push pretty hard on that, but we got it engaged. Now with that done, we can bring back the bottom part of the case that we have thoroughly cleaned and install the board back into the case. Just like that, we line up the ports in the back, kind of let them push through, and then the rest of the case can push down just like that. And it should sit flush on there. It should be, this port shouldn't be pushed up or anything. It should sit right down there. There's a locating pin right here. Now with that there, we can reinstall this little piece right here. To do that, we have to orient it correctly. This curve right here goes around this curve. So we put it there and then we push it down. We need to make sure these little tabs engage with the holes right there. Once that's done, we can put these screws in. I'm actually going to have my hand underneath, putting some pressure on the heatsink to make sure that these holes are all close to the surface there. Then I'll install one of the screws, and that will hold it there so I don't have to keep my hand under there. And now we can install the other 3 screws. Now with that done, we can flip it back over and install some of the internals. We will install the power supply. You need to make sure that the part where you plug in goes right into that hole. Just like that. There are 2 locating tabs down here that you have to make sure are lined up. So if you're having trouble, just turn it over and make sure those are correctly lined up. And with that on there, we can install the fan. If you're having trouble lining up this connector, you can do this before you put the power supply in. That connector is secure, and now the fan is fully installed. Once that's done, this top cover goes on, just like that. Then we can start installing these boards that go on the outside. I'll actually start with the one on this side. Just going to line up the connector and kind of wiggle and push down, just like that, and then install the 3 screws. With that one installed, I will flip it again. We'll install this one with its 3 screws, and then the power button board with its 1 screw. Line up the connector and push it down, and then install the screw. Now we need to turn it over so it is on its top, and we need to install all of the yellow and the one silver screw. This is where all of those screws go. You can pause this if you need to. Also, if you're not totally sure, any of these holes that go all the way through, like these ones right here, those are for the big, long, dark green screws. Next, we'll kind of flip this up like this. We'll bring the top cover over. And what we want to do here is put this end in first. It doesn't have to go in, completely or all the way or anything. And then we need to bring this side in. We need to make sure that the USB port is aligned with the hole in the case right over here. And once it is, it'll kind of slip down in there how it's supposed to go. And then we need to push on this cover just like that. And then it will slide in there how it's supposed to be. And then same on this side, pull over like that. And now this is all aligned how it should be. There should be no huge gaps anywhere here. There should be a little bit of a gap, but nothing big. And these shouldn't be out like this or anything like that. Everything just fits nicely in there just like that. And we can flip it over. And now we will install all of the dark green screws. So you'll see right where all of them go. Basically, we need to fill all of the holes that don't already have a screw in them. Just like that. Now, one of the things you probably already know is these normally turn to the right, but if you turn to the left while pushing down a little bit, you can usually feel kind of a little bit of a click, and then you start turning to the right. And a lot of times you can make sure that the screw threads go into the same threads that they were already in, and they're easier to screw in that way. And after that's done, we can grab our bottom cover. Yours will be much cleaner than mine because it's still got some of the soda spills down in the cracks. But we can grab that, and we need to place it on the case about right there. So there's a little bit of a gap right here. Because what's going to happen is now we can just slide this forward just like that. That's all you got to do for that. And then we can install the 2 screws in the back. With those 2 screws installed, we'll grab our white stickers. If they're bent, you can kind of bend them back. We'll install one right here. Actually, I like to install them kind of the same way I took them off. That ensures that the adhesive is kind of even across it. Right there. And the other one right here. Just like that. And now your Xbox Series X is all completely clean. If you want to know the 3 stages to cleaning your Xbox Series X, I'll put a link for that video up on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see how to clean that one safely. Thanks again to iFixit for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching it, and I hope you have a good one.